The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. Hello, Wolfpack. We're back, and today we're going to take a look at an underrated episode of the hit horror series R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. This was an episode I've been looking forward to tackling for a long time. I know a lot of our viewers have requested some awesome episodes for me to review, but sadly, some of them had to be pushed back since Wolf and I have some big projects planned in the future. I will get to the few requested episodes I still have on the chopping block eventually, but if you can believe it or not, this episode had traits that got me curious. And as you all know, us cats are famously curious, so I just had to watch this story. We have a lot to discuss, so let's get through all the boring talking first before the actual episode. One thing that grabbed my attention is that this episode was actually controversial. You heard right. This Haunting Hour story is considered highly controversial by even hardcore fans of the series. I won't talk about it completely just yet, but the biggest part everyone talks about is the ending. The twist ending was actually considered too dark and depressing even by the standards this show has established. So let me point out how silly it is that absolutely nothing on The Haunting Hour scarred kids for life before this episode did. The haters of this episode are suggesting that it's totally okay to show kids getting their faces cut off by a serial killer, seeing a young guy eaten and digested by a school mascot, and children getting their heads taken off and replaced by pumpkin demons. But this episode, this was the one that went too far. I'm not sure how this episode managed to be the one that was too scary for kids, but just to be on the safe side, I actually have to put up a warning about this review containing violent content that might not be appropriate for some viewers or those who just have weak stomachs. Now, I know all of you who have seen this episode already know what happens, but I don't want to get red flagged, so consider yourselves warned. So you're all most likely curious about what I have to say now, so let's stop wasting time and begin. This is my review of the R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour episode, Brush with Madness. So, our episode opens up at a Comic-Con. Scariest place on Earth, right, kids? We then meet... Wait. What's up with the guy dressed in all-leather bondage gear? Is he cosplaying as Mr. Slave? I mean, try explaining this one to the children under 7, folks. No, this is not the controversial part of the tale yet, but that's a very noticeable adult joke in literally the first 15 seconds. Anyways, we then meet our two main characters, a nerdy comic book fanboy named Corey and his girlfriend, Sailor Moon. Okay, her name is actually Emma, but they rarely refer to her by name at all, so the audience is most likely going to forget who she is. So I'll just call her Sailor Moon, since she's trying to be like her anime counterpart, but manages to be somehow dumber. On a fun side note, Corey is actually played by Dylan Minnette, the same actor who played Chad on the episode Funhouse, and Zach, the main character from the Goosebumps movie. Now, for those of you who wonder what I thought of R.L. Stine's Goosebumps movie, let me just convey my feelings for that in a single statement. Jack Black playing R.L. Stine. Make of that what you will. If you can believe it or not, Dylan is playing a character with the exact same setup as Zach in the Goosebumps movie. Both his character on Goosebumps and his character in this episode are eccentric nerds who interact with a famous writer who hates them, but they accidentally bring evil supernatural characters to life and must confront them to fix their mistakes. It's kind of funny how similar their setups are, but it's no contest that Brush with Madness did a more intense take on it. But back in the plot, Corey and his girlfriend Emma are both energetic nerds who want to meet a famous comic book writer slash artist named Alan Miller. How do we know they're nerds? Because they use weird nerd lingo that nobody has ever said before in their life. Just listen to their nerd speak.
Well, I know Bob's condo night.
Do you know how epic this is? It's like, wow, level 365 gear epic.
Oh, are you serial? That is like totally uber cool. You know what I'm preaching on, bro dad? You see what happens when you try to put cool slang in the dialogue? It just makes it cringy beyond all belief. Thankfully, the two kids don't talk like this all the time, but it gets very weird when they do. As I said before, our main characters came to the Comic-Con to meet the famous graphic novelist Alan Miller. Apparently, this is a very rare convention visit by Miller since he stopped showing up to meet fans a long time ago when a crazy fanboy harassed and stalked him, causing Miller to grow into a paranoid shut-in who hates other people, including his own hardcore fans. You might want to remember that. And because this guy's based off another famous comic book writer with the same last name, this is a chance for me to do a joke I've always wanted to do. Do you know what time it is?
Say! It's Miller time!
For those of you who don't know, Alan Miller is based off of two famous comic book writers, Frank Miller and Alan Moore. Frank Miller wrote several famous graphic novels including Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, Sin City, and 300. Meanwhile, Alan Moore has written Batman the Killing Joke, Watchmen, Swamp Thing, and V for Vendetta. Yeah, the perfect role model to have on this family show. A graphic novelist based on two guys who write very dark stories with no child-friendly atmosphere whatsoever. Yes, there is a point to all this. Alan Miller is basically these two comic book writers combined into one. He writes dark, gritty stories that contain lots of nightmare fuel, just like Frank Miller and Alan Moore do. This episode never exactly tells us what kind of age group Miller is aiming his stories at. As far as we know, he could probably be writing tales similar to 300 or V for Vendetta, which are stories obviously not intended for people around Corey's age. Some viewers actually suggested that this story teaches a lesson that some of us may have overlooked. A lesson about whether or not fans actually understand the content that their favorite writer or performer is talking about in their work. You'll notice that Corey never talks about what kind of stories his hero Alan Miller creates. He admits that he's mainly into Miller's work because it's cool, dark, and edgy, not exactly knowing the truth about his hero's work since he only enjoys the art style and not the message conveyed by the art. This does lead into a very strong argument that even affects writers like R.L. Stine himself. This is an episode that talks about the weirdness of fandom, to a certain extent at least. Corey claims to be a hardcore fan of Miller's work, but he never asks him about his stories, only the cool art he uses to design his dark horror world. What I'm saying is that Corey's one of those guys who claims to understand a famous person's work, but in reality, he has no clue what the story is actually saying. It helps that Corey only seems to be interested in Miller's artwork and not his writing. Don't worry, Miller isn't exactly the victim in all this either, since he's one of those guys who blames his fans for not understanding his work. Take that, My Little Pony. R.L. Stine did the fan-base parodies before you did. Speaking of which, I also think that Alan Miller himself is meant to be an evil version of R.L. Stine. Think about it. Both R.L. Stine and Miller write dark, scary stories featuring supernatural killers, which are read by a wide range of audiences. But R.L. Stine loves entertaining children and even some mature people who love his stories, while Alan Miller despises children and his other fans, all because of one crazy stalker who harassed him to the point of growing cynical. So yay everybody, we have a character who's not only a parody of two famous graphic novelists, but he's also an evil version of R.L. Stine himself. Hey, I'd rather have an evil version of R.L. Stine in this show over the one in the Jack Black movie. Getting back on track, Sailor Moon and Corey are allowed to finally meet Alan Miller after getting past his Native American bodyguard. I hope he doesn't come back for Coat Rock Cowboy. Oh, and Alan Miller is played by Dandy Grandeur from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic episode Fluttershy Leans In. Yes, another My Little Pony voice actor guest stars on The Haunting Hour. While approaching their hero, Sailor Moon tells Corey not to do anything stupid and scare him. But naturally, Corey does something stupid and scares him by telling Miller, a victim of stalking, that he follows him, which causes the writer to leave immediately. Yeah, Corey meant to say that he follows him on Twitter or something, but as you'll all be aware of soon enough, Corey is a total moron. So, as his girlfriend is telling him off for acting like a freak, Corey realizes that Miller forgot his legendary set of paintbrushes he uses to draw. Yes, forgot, completely by accident. Corey tries to do the right thing and return the brushes to Miller, but the writer freaks out and tells Corey to stay away from him, saying that he never wants to see him or any of his fans ever again, with the Native American bodyguard threatening to have a restraining order put on our hero. So after losing faith in his hero, Corey decides to keep the brushes for himself to get back at Miller. When they get home, his girlfriend calls him out on stealing, but Corey says he'll return them eventually, and like an idiot, Sailor Moon completely believes him. Yeah, the girlfriend starts out as a pretty funny character at first, but trust me, she'll grow into an even bigger idiot than Corey by the end. Once Corey has a moment alone with the paintbrushes, he uses them to create his own character based off of his former hero turned enemy, Alan Miller. And we literally get a whole montage of Corey brushing with madness. We cut to school the next day, where Corey shows his girlfriend Sailor Moon his new villain, inspired by Alan Miller, dubbing the character the Mad Artist. Later that day, Corey goes back to painting with the brushes. His girlfriend comes over to see that Corey has gone crazy since he's brushing his OC all across his bedroom walls. Yep, Corey is brushing with madness again as he scribbles the Mad Artist across his walls as a paint job for his bedroom. That's how I get sweet tattoos. So naturally, Sailor Moon thinks that Corey is crazy and says he should return the brushes to clear his mind, but he refuses, causing her to leave in anger. Yes, go and pout. That'll definitely change your boyfriend, right, ladies out there? So while Corey continues to obsessively brush with madness by drawing his OC in a comic wall, we pan outside the window to see the mysterious Mr. Enter.
Do you like waffles?
So it looks like the mysterious Mr. Enter finally went insane and became a supervillain, killing people who hated his channel. No, of course, it's the Mad Artist, who has been summoned by Corey because it turns out that Alan Miller's paintbrushes are magic. So whatever Corey draws happens in real life. Hold on a second. Hasn't R.L. Stine done this story about the imaginary supernatural monster coming to life in the real world before? Twice? 3 times if you count the Goosebumps movie? Which I don't. Actually, yes. R.L. Stine has done this tale before back on his Goosebumps stories. The stories The Blob That Ate Everyone and The Masked Mutant, which had parts from their stories recycled into Brush with Madness. In The Blob That Ate Everyone, the heroes found a magical typewriter that made everything they typed happen in the real world, and they accidentally created the Blob monster, forcing them to write a solution to stop the blob from eating everyone. I won't give anything from the Goosebumps tales away, but the twist ending in the book version of The Blob That Ate Everyone is eerily similar to the twist ending in this episode, as you'll all see soon enough. The Masked Mutant, on the other hand, was also a story about a psychotic comic book villain entering the real world to stalk our nerdy comic book hero and his girlfriend, since the two were slowly getting absorbed into his comic story, much like the setup in Brush with Madness. R.L. Stine is reusing elements from his old tales here, but Brush with Madness puts a much darker spin on them. So the Mad Artist is real now, and trying to steal Mr. Enter's look, while he ominously watches over Corey from the distance. By the way, we get some honestly cool transitions throughout this episode, where the characters fade away into comic book drawings before the commercial breaks cut in. It's really amazing from a cinematic standpoint, and definitely adds in more ominous highlights in this tale, which foreshadow the ending to this story in a very clever way. So after the deranged comic transition, Corey wakes up the next morning to realize that he went a little too crazy drawing on his walls. When he goes downstairs to gather cleaning supplies, he hears a strange noise outside and goes to see a giant black X painted across his front door. Does this mean Corey's house has the bubonic plague? Uh-oh, now he has to have his house locked down by the government and deal with a tentacle monster. Nope, because Corey realizes that he drew this exact scenario on his wall when he sees that his OC, the Mad Artist, left it there as a death threat. making Corey realize that whatever he draws with the brushes will happen in real life. At first, Corey suspects that the mad artist is really Alan Miller messing with him, but thinks that something worse might be going on here. We also get a very scary scene where Corey actually sees himself looking at his own drawing in multiple dimensions, where he breaks the fourth wall by touching himself. Obviously weirded out by all this, Corey calls his girlfriend Sailor Moon for help, because of course she can do something to fix all this, but he sees that she was drawn inside his painted world too. However, she shares a portrait with the mad artist because he's stalking her in both the comic and real life. Corey asks her if she sees the villain's dark car following her, which she does a few seconds later. Corey wisely tells her to run away, so instead of getting on her bike to ride away as fast as she can, Emma stupidly ditches her bike to run away from a car on foot where she's captured instantly. The mad artist tries to abduct her, but Corey manages to get there just in time to scare the villain away. Wait a minute. Corey was just talking to Emma on his phone at his house, but he managed to run as fast as the Flash to the street a few blocks away from his area easily? I guess the Flash shirt he's wearing also gave him super speed. Second, the mad artist was about to take this girl easily, but Corey is what scared him away? Really? A comic book nerd on a bike scared away the creepy serial killer. That does it. All reality just flew out the window in this show about drawings coming to life. Corey manages to save his idiot girlfriend while Mr. Enter drives away. At least we get another awesome comic transition of them running away back to Corey's house. So once Corey's in the house with Sailor Moon, he tells her everything that's been happening, where he realizes that one of his drawings is actually Alan Miller's house, which he used as an inspiration for the mad artist's evil lair. So the duo believe that Alan Miller may be linked to all this craziness somehow, but they try to use Corey's ability to paint the future to their advantage by having our hero paint his visions. Of course, Sailor Moon gets bored by the whole there's a serial killer stalking them and her boyfriend can paint the future junk, so she goes downstairs to get a soda while Corey paints. I'm sure you'd all be bored by that too. Thankfully, we get the greatest cameo in any Haunting Hour episode when Sailor Moon reads a random magazine. It's the Krampus from A Creature Was Stirring. I will admit that I do like this moment a lot, since it is pretty funny. Sadly, I won't be reviewing this episode until Christmas, folks. So after reading the biography of the Krampus, Sailor Moon goes back up to check how Corey's doing, where she turns into a stupid jerk by yelling at her boyfriend for drawing more panels of the mad artist stalking her. And here's where the girlfriend reaches maximum stupidity, everyone. So up to this point, Corey has told her that he has magic paintbrushes that can draw the future, that everything he draws happens in real life. He's shown her, to her face, all the drawings he had with the mad artist stalking her, and even saved her life from the villain earlier. But guess what? When she sees that Corey has more pictures of the villain following her, she declares that she doesn't believe anything Corey says anymore, and decides to go back home alone at night, knowing that there's a dangerous creeper following her. Are you serious? Are you for real? Corey just saved you from a guy trying to abduct you hours ago and showed you all the pictures of the mad artist still following Sailor Moon to her house, but she still decides to go out alone at night with a deranged murderer out there because now she thinks Corey is a liar all of a sudden. Even if you don't believe the whole magic paintbrushes thing, nobody would make a decision this stupid. But guess what? Right after she walks out home alone, Corey sees that he drew a picture of Mr. Enter waiting for Sailor Moon at her house. which sounds like a creepy fanfic when I say it out loud, but you get my point. He runs after her, but sees that she's already gone. I guess she has the Flash's Speed Force too. Comic transition. That night, we at long last have the remainder of this episode acting scary from this point on, since Corey goes on a heroic search to find his idiot girlfriend by going to her ransacked house. When he stupidly goes into the house to find Sailor Moon instead of, calling the police about an abduction, Corey finds blood splattered all over the walls? Nope, it's just paint, since Corey verifies it. Why would the mad artist just randomly throw red paint on the walls? Maybe this is his work of art. Corey continues searching around the house, but fails to find his girlfriend. But he does find a message from the mad artist, revealing that he indeed took her away. So Corey now realizes that a psychotic serial killer is watching everything he does and abducted his girlfriend, taking her to Alan Miller's house, since that was the place that appeared in his picture. Now, what do you all think Corey is going to do to resolve this problem? Is he going to A. Call the police or authority figures to help, B. Gather a group of friends to back him up, C. Use the magical paintbrushes to save the day, or D. Break into Alan Miller's mansion alone and unarmed at night to confront the serial killer by himself without letting anyone know about it? Yes, Corey is really that stupid. I mean, what the heck? You're going to face off against a crazy madman alone inside of a celebrity's mansion? Are you high? Corey is the worst detective ever. Corey, the dumbest amateur detective ever. Well, I guess his detective skills aren't on par with Sunset Shimmer's skills.
Sunset Shimmer, certified detective.
Oh, and apparently it was super easy for Corey to break into the super paranoid Alan Miller's mansion to get ready for a violent fight. Funny, you'd think that a famous celebrity like Alan Miller, a guy who's dealt with a creepy stalker and hates other people, would have a better security system to prevent other people from breaking into his house at night. I mean, who's running this lousy home security? So after effortlessly breaching Alan Miller's mansion, we do get a very intense scene where Corey's exploring the dark house, where he then hears the screams of his girlfriend in pain under the basement. Yeah, while this does get much scarier as we go along, it sadly came at the cost of basic common sense. Corey finds his girlfriend tied to a torture device right out of the Saw movies, and he tries freeing her. Imagine that, Sailor Moon in danger again. But the villain jumps him, and Corey gets captured. Seriously, what was your big plan here, Corey? Did you really think that you were just gonna waltz right up in a supervillain base and save the day without having to face off against the serial killer who, is waiting for you? I know this is where I'd go into an overly long, angry rant, but if you can believe it or not, there's actually a clever moment coming soon. So our hero regains consciousness after getting his butt kicked, and finds himself strapped to a torture device as well, with a dark X marking him. The mysterious Mr. Enter comes in as he goes through his big villain monologue, where we get our twist ending. It turns out that the mad artist was really Corey. Wait, what? So this entire time, the mad artist was actually Corey all along. But it gets even weirder. The villain reveals that he was not created by Corey, but instead, he's the real Corey, and that the Corey we've been following this whole time was actually a drawing the villain made up. This means absolutely nothing. Yeah, they don't build on this revelation at all, and it's immediately glossed over in the very next few minutes. So the real Corey, aka the mad artist, decides that it's time to erase his creations, and he does so by using a massive buzzsaw to butcher the kids. Wow, this just got hardcore. In most Haunting Hour episodes, the kids would die through magical deaths, but here, the writers just said, screw it, let's butcher these two kids with a giant buzzsaw. And we all know what happens next. No, sadly there's no blood shown. But yes, these kids are really mutilated by a buzzsaw, so you can bet that this episode is getting lots of points for this. Instead, we get a double twist ending, where it's revealed that this entire episode was really a comic book written by Alan Miller. Yep, absolutely nothing you saw in this episode was real at all. When Miller's bodyguard comes in to ask what he's working on, Miller replies that he's writing a comic book based on his crazy stalker, the real Corey, as a way to vent out his hatred. Why, he even drops the episode's title on us to show us all how this episode was made up solely by him. Take that, copyright. When the guard asks him if he'll publish it, Miller says he doesn't plan on releasing it at all since it was just a personal project, meaning that all the hard work he put into this meant absolutely nothing, but it was just a personal exercise. So Miller decides to shred the comic, meaning that Corey and Emma are killed off for real, since the paper shredder symbolizes the buzzsaw mutilating them. End of story. And that was the end of Brush with Madness. How does it hold up? Well, let me put it this way. It has a lot of good qualities to it, but it also has a lot of dumb moments in it. My biggest gripe with the episode is how blatantly stupid our heroes Corey and Emma act. Seriously, they do everything you can do in a horror story completely wrong. They walk around alone, knowing that a serial killer's after them. They never contact the police or other help. They fight with each other all the time. Instead of working with each other to survive, they talk in annoying teen slang, and they try to deal with their entire problems all by themselves. Now, to be fair, the fact that this entire story was controlled by Alan Miller kind of justifies this. Alan Miller was manipulating the characters the entire time, meaning that he wrote them the way he wanted to write them. Corey and the Mad Artist are both based on a crazy fanboy who harassed Miller and drove him so angry that he deliberately wrote this comic based off his stalker and wanted to have Corey die a gruesome death as a way to vent out his anger. He wrote Corey how he pictured his life. This shows that Miller looks down on those weird fanboys by making Corey act like an antisocial idiot, having him talk like a nerd, have him do incredibly stupid decisions since Miller thinks so little of him, and build him up to die a grisly death for his own amusement. As far as we know, we don't know what the real Corey was actually like. I love how they keep it ambiguous if Corey was either the energetic nerd with no life or the deranged stalker who murdered people he grew bored of. It is pretty fun that this episode wants to make us think. They also don't make it clear if the Corey we followed was a real person taken into the comic world by Alan Miller once he grabbed the magic paintbrushes at the convention, or if it was all a lie from the very beginning and none of what we just saw was real at all. One thing that did work towards this episode's advantage is that there is time to get attached to Corey and make us believe that he's real, but that does link to viewers feeling that the twist ending was super dark and depressing since Corey and his innocent idiot girlfriend did not go out peacefully. Now I'll address the controversy surrounding this episode. Yes, it is dark to show two children getting murdered by a buzzsaw. That is completely obvious. However, I love the ending because it's so dark. That's what makes the Haunting Hour so great. R.L. Stine thinks that kids and families can handle watching something as gritty as two children getting mutilated in a cruel and unusual death. This just shows how much faith he and his writing staff put in their viewers. They think we can handle gruesome death in stories aimed at all ages. Maybe they put in a little too much faith in the viewers, but it shows how much care the show has for its content. Not all Haunting Hour episodes are dark, but when they are, we want them to be as scary as possible. Truth be told, we've all seen kids in the show die in worse ways before. Corey and Emma may have gotten the most painfully realistic death, but Miller killed them off quickly as opposed to other children who suffer far worse. But trust me, you do not want to remove the dark qualities from the Haunting Hour at all, because that prevents them from going all out with their tales. When you remove the intense horror from R.L. Stine, we end up with awful episodes like Pouf de Fromage and Near Mint Condition. Don't ask for lighter and softer episodes on a show that was intended to be dark and scary to begin with. I honestly don't feel that sorry for Corey and Emma either. They were annoying and stupid. I know Alan Miller wrote them that way, but if you are watching this episode while unaware of the twist, they still get on your nerves for all their foolishness. Plus, Corey was based off of a stalker who attacked Miller in real life. But they do have a morally gray theme in all this, since what Miller did to his sentient characters was horrible, and the Corey we followed in the main story wasn't really a bad guy. This ending does still have a lesson in the end about fandom, from both points of view. You shouldn't obsess over a celebrity or famous person acting like you're their #1 fan and know them personally, because chances are your heroes are not always the person you think they are. The girl in the painting taught a similar lesson to that. But for the writers out there, this episode taught something for you too. You shouldn't let one crazy fan, or even a critic who dislikes your work, get to your head. Write what you love to write. You don't have to freak out if somebody dislikes your work or follows you all the time asking you to do this or do that. Create what you want, because if you obsess over somebody who obsesses over you, then you're no better than that person, because you could end up crossing the line yourself. Pretty deep lessons for a story about a serial killer mauling children. I'm sure R.L. Stine has dealt with this kind of stuff himself, but he just wanted to make a warped horror story about it. I just hope that this episode isn't his way of saying that the Goosebumps movie was right about R.L. Stine only writing his Goosebumps stories as a way for him to fantasize killing his bullies. That movie irks me. But back to Corey. I honestly don't believe that he was a real person trapped in a comic world. I'm with the idea that he was a fictional character this whole time who grew aware of his existence since he didn't act like a real person at times, and was shocked to see another version of himself. The girlfriend was annoyingly stupid and just a damsel in distress, but you do kind of feel for her, since she didn't really do anything that bad either, but still ends up dying with her boyfriend anyway. Then again, Alan Miller is a sadist. Not to mention that Corey and Emma were deliberately made stupid because they act the way Alan Miller views them. Of course, this still makes them annoying and shows what a bad writer Alan Miller is, but I think anyone who tries to use dated slang to sound cool in his comic is dumb. Though this might have been a way to jab at Frank Miller's dumb moments in his stories when he tried to be cool.
I love being the goddamn Batman!
Alan Miller was the true villain of this story, but the show tried to fool us into believing that the mad artist was the mastermind. Miller controlled everything that happened in the story and made this all up to enjoy Corey's death. Though there are some plot holes in this story whenever he's involved, like why would Miller write about himself being a jerk towards kids over something he knew was a mistake? This does lead into the theory that Miller deliberately left his magic paintbrushes out for Corey to get and absorbed him into his comic book world, but that would also imply that Miller has a magic power to take people away from the real world, which is something I find too hard to believe. Either way, Miller is a sick person in the end, despite whatever theories you have, since he does kill Corey and Emma no matter how hard you think about it. What a monster. As for our other villain, the mad artist, he was pretty cool as well. He definitely has the fear power to intimidate the audience. I still have no clue why he was Corey all along, or why he thinks he created the comic world, since it's quickly blown off immediately. Seriously, he just shows that he's the real Corey like it matters, then just offs the kids. My best guess is that the mad artist is how Alan Miller saw Corey as a stalker, since he constantly follows the kids, leaves threatening messages, and displays signs of a serial killer. We also don't know if he was killed in the comic world too when Alan Miller shredded it, since we only get the idea that Corey and Emma were dead. But I think it's safe to say that the mad artist most likely perished after his victims did. Though one bad thing I have to say about him is that I don't think he has a memorable costume design. He has a pretty gruesome scene, which I love, but I don't think that the mad artist is going to be a villain fans would recognize instantly. Seriously, why does he look like Mr. Enter? Now that I've killed those brats, I'm going to go kill Teen Titans Go. Nevertheless, I feel that this episode has a lot of strong points in it that overshadows both the controversy and bad qualities of this episode. It makes us question if our own reality is real or not, since maybe somebody higher has been controlling our existence all along, which is a pretty nightmarish idea to think about. I love the dark twist ending since it redeems so many of the idiot moments I hated while watching this. Brush with Madness may not have the same memorable characters as other episodes, but it definitely has a brilliant story. I give this episode a silver skull. It barely makes it to a good quality, but I like it still despite its flaws. We have a legitimately creepy story that makes us paranoid over whether our reality is real, and it ends on one of the darkest endings to ever haunt our nightmares. I strongly recommend watching this episode. I will warn you all that when it has a dumb moment, it really has a dumb moment. But the twist ending will make you want to rewatch it again to appreciate how clever it really was in the end. Brush with Madness is a scary episode that screws with your mind, but it is clearly a decent work of art. Oh no, I'm being erased! Sorry, I'm just drawing some new tattoos. Dang you, House. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I hope you all see the beauty of true art.